Just days before Melissa Lucio was set to be executed over the death of her daughter, a Texas appeals court has stepped in. They're now saying new evidence should be heard first. Here now to talk more about the ongoing debate over the death penalty is Celia Ouellette. She is the founder and the CEO of the Responsible Business Initiative for Justice. Celia, thank you so much for being with us.
Good morning. Thank you.
So what do you think about Lucio's case? What does it show about the support or maybe the lack of support for the death penalty in the United States? As we've been pointing out, there was bipartisan support for a judge to take a look at this case again, for the governor to issue the stay of execution. But I don't know if it has something to do with the larger impression about the death penalty in the United States, as opposed to the specifics in this case, which would show that this would be an unjust execution. At least that's what her supporters are arguing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that everything that you just said is so kind of emblematic. Obviously, a judge has made a decision about Melissa's case individually and has decided that the case needs a full evidentiary review to address and look at properly for the first time the evidence of her innocence. But the bigger picture, which you just alluded to, nearly 100 Texas legislators, a bipartisan coalition, faith leaders, campaign organizations, and in my role, I work with business leaders, have stepped out and spoken up about the death penalty and Melissa's case in particular. And I think that is because Melissa's case is emblematic of a lot of what is wrong with the death penalty and a lot of what people see as wrong with the death penalty. Two chief reasons in Melissa's case, there's a very strong claim of innocence, and people do not sit well with the idea of executing innocent people. In America's recent history of the death penalty, for every 8 people executed, we have a formally exonerated 1 in every 8 of those. So we know our error rate is actually not great. We're not doing a great job of catching people before that they get to that point of seeing an execution date late in the day. And the second is, Melissa is emblematic of vulnerable people that end up doing things like confessing falsely and ending up in a position where they are facing a capital murder trial. And as you might have seen on our large campaign with business leaders about the death penalty, these are 2 issues that sit very badly with people. The idea that we might be executing innocent people, and the idea that we may be applying the death penalty in an unequal way, that the burden falls particularly heavy on people that we should actually be working hard to protect in our community. In Melissa's case, she has been a victim of domestic violence and rape.
And, we were pointing out earlier that, the courts don't take a second look at cases just because people are yelling loud, right? It's because there's additional evidence. It's because there's, a proof or some sort of indication of wrongdoing. And that's why she's getting a fair shake that she perhaps did not get before. Right. That being said, having people yell really loud on your behalf makes basically all the difference, unfortunately. So I want to talk a little bit about your organization that really focuses on getting corporations to take a stand when it comes to the death penalty. And I'm wondering, what do you do and how does that kind of manifest itself? Like, what does a corporation do to express its displeasure with capital punishment?
I mean, exactly as you said, people speaking out loudly is what changes the kind of narrative and the political context of the death penalty. Essentially, when you get to a situation like Governor Abbott got to, the courts fortunately intervened, what it really takes to save a life and to stop a practice like the death penalty is political courage. Frankly, that's it. It needs political courage. And there is significant cover and safety in taking a little bit of political courage when you have the support and backing of, for example, 250 business leaders, for example, 100 members of the Texas legislature from both sides of the aisle. So, when you see the death penalty in its current and its historic context, which is really a political tool, if we're honest, like that's what it's really being used a lot for at the moment, you need to put political weight on the side of the table, on the side of the balance, that pushes us towards ending this practice. And so for us with businesses over the past year, we launched this campaign just a little over a year ago with Sir Richard Branson of the Virgin Group. And actually we launched it with Sabrina Butler Smith, who is the first woman to be exonerated from death row, the first woman to be formally found innocent from death row. And we launched it for businesses to have a place where they could jointly raise their voices about the death penalty. My background is actually a death penalty lawyer. And, for me, this was even beyond what I expected in terms of the speed of uptake, the speed of interest that we saw of businesses wanting to be part of this. And it really reflected for me that there has been this shift of businesses in taking a position on political issues. And if you provide them with a platform and a sort of center of gravity to do that, they will want to do that in very large numbers.
So I guess the question for many people will be how many Melissa Lucios are out there sitting on death row. We know from the Innocence Project and other organizations that track this that there are many. And often, it's a thin line, right? Evidence that was introduced or not introduced. A person whose testimony was a little fuzzy, but was because of various reasons, not swept under the rug, but police didn't make a big deal out of it, and the jury perhaps never heard it.
Or in some cases, as we have in this case, what sounds like a quasi-confession.
Right.
But without knowing how police got to that point.
Right.
A jury may think, well, you admitted that you did this.
Yes, and we're talking about people's lives, and so I wonder for people who find themselves in situations like that, Celia, what are their options?
Well, as we've seen in Melissa's case, it's like passing through the eye of a needle to achieve what Melissa Lucio's lawyers have achieved. I have had a case in exactly the same posture that Melissa's is in now. Previously, it is incredibly difficult. It is sort of a once-in-a-career event for many death penalty lawyers that you will succeed on a successive habeas petition like Melissa Lucio did. So I think what I want to say with that is it takes an extraordinary amount of work and skill by a legal team to even persuade a court to get them to the place of being able to present evidence of innocence once somebody has been convicted and sentenced to death. So many people that find themselves in a position of having evidence that they would at least like a jury to hear. In Melissa's case, no jury has heard the evidence that she's now presented to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, will really struggle to get to that point. And I think this is why organizations like mine are pushing very hard on ending the death penalty as a practice, because, with all the sophisticated legal system that we do have in America compared to other countries around the world, we have failed. We have failed to catch cases of innocent people, and the political system makes it very hard for governors to, or the political optics sometimes make it very hard for governors to step in and issue clemency, even when that is the right thing to do. I think, we all watched Julius Jones's case in Oklahoma recently, and it came down to 4 hours before his execution was due to take place before the governor finally stepped in and did the right thing and stopped that execution from happening.
Celia Ouellette, thank you so much.
Thank you.